All right, great. Thanks a lot. So, hi everyone. I'm Andre. I run the CloudVision engineering team here at Arista. Really excited to spend a little bit more time in this section to talk about our CloudVision as a service offering. And just like you did with Ken, please jump in, interrupt. I know the remote format is hard, but hopefully we can keep this fairly interactive while still keeping our time schedule here. So, Ken and Doug talked about this a little bit, but just for context, right? CloudVision is our unified management and analytics platform for the entire enterprise network, right? So it doesn't matter if we're talking about your data center, your campus, your hybrid cloud, your wired or wireless infrastructure, is your unified management platform for the entire thing, right? Because if you think about the challenge of network operators today, it's really about managing the entire domain and tracking down problems that may be in any one of these infrastructures, from the client connecting the wireless infrastructure through your campus into the data center to where your application is, right? You need to be able to follow that path and understand that entire kind of view to be able to really get to root cause and help, and resolve the issue. So in that way, CloudVision provides a suite of different capabilities. There are kind of three main pillars to it. The first is a fully automated network deployment and management system, right? So everything from day zero, initial provisioning, as Ken was just showing off, to ongoing change controls. How do you manage the lifecycle of your devices? The next is real-time streaming telemetry. So we take the entire state of the network from our devices, we build this network-wide database, and we give you the most granular visibility possible through this streaming telemetry. And then on top of that, layer our cognitive analytics, right? So this is built on top of the streaming to look at the state as it comes in and surface actionable insights on top of that. CloudVision provides a host of other features, from network compliance and risk assessment to security services and policy enforcement. But again, for this talk, I really want to talk about the cloud service. I'm really excited about having been able to announce it and talk about it more generally. And the benefits of a cloud service are probably pretty obvious, right? But if you look at the products available to network operators today, the only cloud service offerings available are these siloed point products, right? So it's either a campus Wi-Fi controller, maybe your campus if you're lucky, right? Or it's an SD-WAN vendor, or more often some security space product, right? There isn't an option that provides this full network management analytics across the entire enterprise network in a single platform. And so that's really where CloudVision as a service comes in. CloudVision has always stood apart as this multi-domain management and analytics system. And now we get that same thing as a cloud service, right? But it's more than just that, right? Like, part of what I want to talk about today is where the cloud service enables just fundamentally different features, whether it's richer AI and ML analytics or a more connected customer support experience. And it's funny, I guess we're talking about past Tech Field Days and acquisition announcements. Back 2 years ago, we were on Tech Field Day talking about our Mojo acquisition, right? And now, if you look back at that, this kind of our goal of providing this complete multi-domain platform really aligned well with where Mojo was with their cloud-first Wi-Fi offering. And that's now what enables us to provide this complete cloud service offering across both wired and wireless. And you may have seen this morning, actually, we had an exciting announcement around some new Wi-Fi products and CloudVision capabilities, and hopefully you can check that out separately. But so let's dig into the cloud service a bit more. So Ken mentioned this briefly. We started CloudVision with the idea of building a cloud service. And so even though we packaged it on-prem, we started with a set of design decisions that really allow us to take advantage of the elastic scale of the cloud, right? So it's a fully containerized, multi-tenant, scale-out application. So it runs on top of Kubernetes, whether in your virtual appliance, on a physical server, or in the scale-out cloud service, right? We then go and take all the state from all the systems and we put it into Cognitive NetDB. And Cognitive NetDB and kind of our streaming telemetry, these are key architectural differentiators for us that in terms of how others have approached the problem, right? Like, we started from this statement, if you remember the quick slide Ken went over, like, the first thing is collect all the state, right? How can we build a system that allows us to stream all the state of the network, all the counters, the routing tables, full plot, all the platform details, basically everything that's available from the CLI, stream that in real time to CloudVision, where it's then aggregated into this network-wide database, which we call NetDB. And then we build an infrastructure on top of that for being able to process this data as it enters, to do everything from data normalization and statistical trending to then more advanced anomaly detection and modeling. And so in the cloud service, you get to take advantage of this entire CloudVision feature set, along with the elastic scale of the cloud, secure access from anywhere, and importantly, you get the latest features automatically deployed, the latest insights and analytics without having to actually take downtime or figure out how to upgrade your cluster. And so I'm going to go into these in a little bit more time. I was going to go into a quick little demo. I'm actually going to leave that to Mark and Upasana, who are going to go into a more full-fledged demo. When you log into Arista.io, you're presented with your enterprise identity provider, right? So whatever you're using for the rest of your enterprise for login management and identity management, you provide your tenant name and you log in, right? And I'll let Upasana go through more of the product there. But to talk, but I want to kind of dive into some of the benefits of the cloud service, right? And what they really mean, and hopefully get some of your feedback and questions on them. So the first is kind of the value of a fully managed software service, right? I don't care what industry you're in. If you have had to deploy a management software of some kind, you know that maintaining that management software is yet another job on top of your day job, right? In the network operations context, what you really want to be able to do is focus on managing and monitoring the network, right? Keeping it up, keeping your customers happy, and everything else around that is just additional work. And so what I wanted to highlight here is in the cloud service context, we approach this from a software engineering perspective, probably isn't that surprising. We build a site reliability engineering team. This is a software engineering team, 24/7 global support that manages our clusters and builds software around maintaining, monitoring, and growing them. And so that then removes this burden from the network operator to simply be able to take advantage of the service immediately and not have to do all the other things around it. On the scale side, so as mentioned, we're going a little bit more detail. With this containerized architecture, we run our clusters, which are our Kubernetes clusters, in regions across the world in tier 1 service providers, right? And so you have our multi-tenant infrastructure that runs in that cluster, and then customers are kind of allocated to these different clusters. And so because of our architecture, we're able to take advantage of the natural elasticity and scale of the cloud service. So as more devices get spun up, as we add more features, as we're doing more analytics on the back end, as more devices are turned up, the cluster automatically grows from a cloud resource perspective, and the application is able to take advantage of those new resources automatically. And so this is super important, obviously, for any cloud service, but I think it really kind of differentiates us from what I would say a lot of cloud service offerings end up being, which are these kind of on-premise VM appliances that are thrown into the cloud and weren't really built with the thought of this elastic scale in mind. But what I'm most excited about here is really kind of this enormous data set that we're building, right? So, and how that opens up, both the AI and ML techniques we're doing now and in the future, right? So your analytics are only as good as the data you have. And this is where it's super important that we're able to take this data across, the full data of our devices, wired and wireless, bring that together, right? We're able to then, so that's everything from management plane, data plane, control plane, right? We get to then use that to build a sense of who's in the network, what's connected where, right? How did the data center, campus, et cetera, connect together? And who's talking to whom? What's actually happening, right? So you have this full picture of what's going on in the network, and then you marry that with our domain knowledge, right? Our expert systems to be able to say what's normal, what's not, right? And so as we build up this enormous kind of data set, this is what then drives being able to actually do interesting ML and AI techniques to tell you when things are actually going well or not in the network, right? If you don't have the data, you have no opportunity at all to do this. And so I think this is going to be a fundamental differentiator for us for a long time. But I also want to talk about what we're doing today. So, at the end of the day, from a network operator perspective, the analytics, the number one goal is tell me what's wrong, why, and what to do about it, right? And so we take this view from kind of two equally important perspectives. One is from an infrastructure perspective, and here I'm focusing not just on this simple trending sort of aspect, but kind of where we do some more interesting ML modeling. And I would say that one of the hardest parts of network operations are the gray failures, right? Hard down, your link went down. Okay, yes, that caused an issue, but like it's still down. I see it there. Like I get an alert. The thing that's most kind of insidious is when there's something that's sometimes failing, right? You have congestion that sometimes causes drops, right? Or you have RF interference on the Wi-Fi side that means that as your client is walking around the building, they sometimes have issues, right? And so how do you track down these issues, right? And this is where on the infrastructure side, we've put a lot of focus on things like anomaly detection, right? So if you look at build a model for what's happening in your network and what's normal, right? What's the reachability? What's the latency? And whenever that changes, that's an opportunity for either a problem that may happen or is happening, right? And so that building that model of what's normal and then telling you when things are off that is really important. Or you look at resource utilization, right? And things like lag hashing, right? Like, are you seeing elephant flows that's causing one of your interface in the lag to spike? How do you model that when kind of what's normal in one enterprise versus another may be totally different? And so these are the sorts of things that we can look at on this incredibly rich data set to be able to build this model of what your network, what's normal in your network, and then tell you when things are going wrong or when they may go wrong. Now, the user perspective is equally important, right? Like, if you're running a campus network, the number one thing that matters is your user experience good, right? People are going to call you and say, why can't I connect to the network, right? And so how do you address that? And so there's kind of two important features I want to highlight here. One is not just knowing that there's a problem, right? We talked about the client journey where we track users as they connect to the network, associate, are able to authenticate, and then get onto the network properly. But when there are issues, why? Right? And this is where we use things like decision trees to say, okay, well, what is the issue for this user at this time? Do you need, and what can you do about it? Do you need to go have better coverage from an AP perspective in this building? Right? Or one of my favorites is application quality of experience monitoring, right? How frustrating is it that the way that you know that users are unhappy is that they call you to tell you that they're unhappy, right? Like, we all know where these problems come from, right? You're trying to use some application, you're doing a video stream, and you see some glitchy behavior, you're not really sure what's going on. We've built models to be able to monitor that in real time so we can understand when the quality of experience of different applications is deviating from what we consider good. And that means as a network operator, you're told when things are not looking good before a user ever actually has to come and call you. And so these are just some examples of like the possibilities, both from a core infrastructure fabric perspective and from a user-facing perspective, where we can use these advanced techniques built on top of this core data set that we've now accumulated in the cloud service and continue to iterate there to continue to provide more interesting examples as we go. So with that, unless there are any questions, I want to hand it over to Mark and Upasana. We're going to talk through another exciting part of the cloud service, which is how it kind of fundamentally changes the experience from a customer service perspective.
Quick introduction. My name is Mark Burley. I'm the head of global support and services at Arista Networks. And I want to expound on what Andre said and talk about how the support and services team at Arista can leverage the streaming data and CVOS for better service for our customers. One point I want to emphasize is CVOS gives us real-time state of the network via streaming data. It's not polling or not sent at fixed intervals, which if you think about sending stuff at fixed intervals, that's just really unsolicited polling. The streaming data is sent as changes happen in the network. And why is that important? It's important because it doesn't have gaps. In short, it's a lot higher fidelity. I kind of liken it to phones, and you keep getting more and more megapixels on your cameras. And if you've got a lower megapixel camera, the more you zoom in, the more you see that pixelization. And at some point, that pixelization is so bad that you really can't make out what you're looking at. And in troubleshooting, it's very similar with the data, right? As you get these gaps, the bigger the gaps are, the bigger the hole in that data, and the bigger time that you can have a problem and not really know what happened. And now we can infer what happened in those gaps by the before and after, but and we're pretty good at inferring. But as someone who's having an issue, I want facts and not inference, right? And that's where that ability to stream real time is very interesting. I've monologued a little bit, so I really want to talk about the kind of customer support model, kind of where we're at, and then how it's going to improve with CVOS, and then we're going to go into a demo. So let's just start really basic with opening a case, right? This is kind of the traditional model. Your customer, you open a case, you have questions or issues, you send an email, open a ticket, or call the number, right? Traditionally, what you've seen a lot of vendors is you go through this entitlement merry-go-round of serial numbers and all these other things. Then you go through various tiers of support engineers. At Arista, we've always tried to strive to do it differently. We really eliminate these entitlement barriers and give you access to someone who can help the second you call, right? And so, the first question when you're opening a ticket, say via the phone, isn't going to be what's your serial number. It's going to be, hi, I'm so-and-so, nice to meet you. How can I help you? We're going to focus at that. It's going to be a tier 3 engineer. It's going to be someone who can immediately help you, someone who's trained and versed in the products you're using. And this is a huge improvement, but we're still left with this data collection problem, right? And data collection, and I'm sure everyone here, everyone watching us out there has been through this. It's like, I have problem X, here's a show tag, right? And you send them the show tag. And then the engineer looks at it and says, hey, can you send me this data? And you send them that data. And there's just back and forth, right? And you rinse and repeat until you get the right amount of data. Just based on history, I see 3 to 5 email exchanges. Now, on-demand VPN, which is really just a fancy way of saying Zoom or GoToMeeting or Teams, whatever, helps to some extent, right? I mean, we can troubleshoot live, but the reality is these meetings take time to set up, get everyone on board, get access to all those devices, right? So, that typically drags these problems out, from resolution in minutes. Generally, it takes hours. Worst case, it can take days or weeks, right? And this is really where CVOS comes in. Imagine the scenario where you open the case and you say, here's my problem description. Now, the TAC engineer can get into a read-only instance of your tenant and start troubleshooting immediately, right? And so now the engineer not only can see all the data, they can see a topology view, which is many times difficult. It's like, hey, can you share a BSD? What's connected to what? I can see all of that. We can see events, as Andre was talking about, right? You get to see all of those events that the system is pointing out to you. So do those events correlate in time to my problem? If they do, great. I can even get to traffic flows and say, hey, here's a source, here's a destination. Show me the devices this is traversing. And now I know which devices to troubleshoot. You got 50 devices in topology, and I can isolate that to 3 or 4 devices. Guess what? It's a heck of a lot easier for me to troubleshoot, right? So that's kind of your step one. If you take it one step further, I can now start to, look at, like I said with the event center, hey, this switch or this device has got drops on it, right? So maybe that's why you're having problems with that application sitting behind it. You can continue on and start really moving into that predictive phase, right? And whenever I talk about predictives, I like to talk really more about gray failures, because typically your hard fails, the routing protocols and everything take over, things converge, and they tend to be relatively benign in many cases. But think about all the times you've had some optic kind of fail, but it's up enough to work some of the time. And it takes a long time to troubleshoot that. With all the streaming data, we're getting back all of that PHY information, that stuff that's really hard to read anyway. You have to really know what you're looking at to read it. The machine can read it, it can look at trends, and then it can apply that trend analysis and start to predictively tell you, hey, you know what? With 70% certainty, I'm pretty sure that optic's going to fail, or that you need to check the patch, you need to clean the fiber. It can give you actionable steps that you can then schedule as part of a planned maintenance window, or maybe some of them aren't, don't require that window, so that you can take some level of remedial action. And that's really where we're going and the types of services that we're going to be offering with CVOS. So I'm more of a show me person than a slide person. And with all that being said, I'd like to turn it over to Upasana, and I wanted to bring her along. She's one of my escalation leads, one of our senior technical engineers. She still takes cases. And so I want you to hear from somebody like her and actually walk you through troubleshooting that we've done with an actual customer to help determine an issue, one of those transient issues. So they called, there was a problem in the past, and they want to know what the cause was. And we don't have to tell them, hey, go get a sniffer, and if it happens again, we'll tell you what happened. No, we can actually tell you what happened in this case. So Upasana, do you want to transition over?
Thanks, Mark. As Mark mentioned, I work with the Arista Tech team, and I just wanted to use this opportunity to share an example of a customer who opened a ticket with us to root cause connectivity issues, and let's define the time frame at 4:38 to 4:50 a.m. They provided us with a bunch of sample flows, which is good, and mentioned that there were no changes made to the network during that outage window. Now, ideally, for me to move forward on this, I need some more information about the network, and that's usually where I rely on a call with the customer or ask for logs. Now, in this case, if the customer has CloudVision as a service tenant to which we've been given prior access to, I can immediately investigate what's going on and just bypass this back and forth, which is needed to obtain information about the device. So once I'm into the service instance, the first place I'm going to check for the obvious is the events tab. And this is a really good starting point for CloudVision because, CloudVision in general is always, on the prowl looking for events that are, could be impacting. And the aim is to, sort of make it more visible for, customers and us just to alert as soon as possible if something's going to happen. And, in certain cases, even alert before the actual impact could happen. And, in our tab as well, we can see that CloudVision has sort of already, logged some adverse events and, such as BGP, proactive config sanity checks, anomalies. And while some of these could sort of contribute to my customer's issue, none of the timestamps actually match the window that I'm troubleshooting. So I'm going to keep this on the back burner and move forward. Now, given that I already have a few of the affected flows, my thought would be that, hey, you know what, let's just get a little bit more familiar with the topology. Let's try to find out what the expected traffic flow is going to be and start to narrow down my focus of troubleshooting from there. And flow visibility, which is a really cool feature in CloudVision, just lets me do exactly that. So, and it's really helpful because, one of the major challenges that we face, just from TAC and even from network operators is that, when you're chasing down a flow, it's really hard to figure out, where this flow is with manual lookups, which just gets tedious as your network continues to scale. And so CloudVision just makes that whole part super easy for folks like us to take a look at. And with CloudVision as a service, I can just skip this lead time of getting all of this information from the customer, and because it's already mutually available to us in the cloud. So in this case, let's try to, take a look at the flows that are available, and let's take a look at one of the sample flows that the customer gave me. Yeah, let's see. If I could type. Okay. Sometimes it autocompletes for you as well. All right, so in this case, you can see that the traffic sort of going through leaf, spine, edge device of the customer. And if I want, I can just directly start from the edge device and just go hop by hop and troubleshoot from there. So once I get into the device, I actually have access to numerous levels of hardware, L2, L3 routing table that are constantly being streamed to CloudVision, along with other useful information. And normally I would need a tech support for all of this, but right now it's already there in the cloud service for us to start acting on. And this is awesome because with CloudVision, the states that we sort of see here, these are not just the current snapshot of the switch. It's CloudVision maintaining continuous history of each of these tables. And this is really useful because more often than not, when we are troubleshooting, we are most of the times looking at these historic bits and pieces for a larger, bigger picture. And that happened somewhere in the past, right? And with this whole CloudVision's streaming of information to create like a time-based database, it actually gives us that opportunity to go back in time and analyze this granular data and come up with our own conclusions on that. So applying it to my case here, this was a routed flow. So I'm going to first start with the routing table. Now, when I'm here, I have the option, given that if I have a window or a time frame that I'm trying to troubleshoot, I can always go back and forth and get to the time that I want. But here, even in the live view, I can see that CloudVision's been doing some of my work for me, because CloudVision also does a lot of monitoring of these real-time state changes, which includes stuff like routing. And here, CloudVision has already identified that there were a bunch of routes that were withdrawn for this device and added back. And if you can see here, it actually matches the prefix that I'm troubleshooting, and it also matches the time frame that I'm troubleshooting. And there's a very good chance that this is what is affecting the customer, and that's what caused our problem. And well, if you look at this, chasing down like route withdrawals, which is most likely our root cause here, without any telltale signs of an issue, usually could take a while. And most troubleshooting tools out there, which are polling based, might even have missed something as because this is a very short event, and completely altogether, right? So with CloudVision, like this whole experience sort of becomes easier. And to be honest, this is just like one example of what we do in day-to-day of troubleshooting with CloudVision that just only barely highlights what a powerful debugging tool CloudVision is for us. And in this case, thanks to CloudVision as a service, my first interaction with the customer after they open the case with us is to already have an action plan for them. Like in this case, what I would be recommending them is, hey, Mr. Customer, could you go also check with your ISP about why these routes were removed so abruptly, and we can take it from there. So yeah, that's what I wanted to sort of showcase here. If does anyone have any questions? All right. So in that case, I'm going to move it back to you, Mark.
All right. Thank you, Upasana, and thanks everyone for taking the time. I think you can see there's a lot of real applicability here. Support tends to not be the sexy thing that everyone wants to talk about, but the reality is, I don't care how stable your network is. I don't care how good your code is. I don't care how good your network operations team is. You're going to have problems. It happens. And the point is how quick can you respond and point out the problem. In many cases, our customers are finding these problems on their own using CVOS. They don't even have to call us. They say, oh yeah, well, here's the problem. And when they do call us, our customer intimacy, what we know about the customer is dramatically improved. And as Upasana says, in this case, by the time she got on the Zoom session with the customer, she already knew the problem. She had an action plan, and she was able to effectively communicate it to them. I mean, how many times, and everyone here, we were talking about modems earlier, so all of us have been in IPX, so we've all been in the industry for a while. How many times have you had an issue, say with some form of service provider, and you call them and they say, well, we didn't have a problem. And you've got no evidence, so you say, okay, well, I guess they didn't have a problem. Now you can say, hey, look, it looks like you withdrew this route. And all of a sudden, you tend to get to a much more satisfying answer. And you're able to then report back up your chain of command, so to speak, what the issue was, which makes everyone feel better. Definitive root cause is always a good thing. So Mark, with that, I think we're going to talk about any questions. I'm sorry.
For clarification, you're saying CVOS, is that CloudVision as a service?
Correct. I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you.
Mark, yeah, we like to call it CloudVision as a service, but Mark hasn't gotten there yet.
Everything's, I like AAS. That's all I got to say. I cannot lie. So